I do a lot of corporate work. I do a lot of marriage and family work. Anything having to do with strengthening healthy relationships is what I'm about. I grew up in a broken home, and I was committed to making sure my kids didn't go through the same things that I went through, my wife as well. But I also found out in my work, especially in public policy, because I worked for Governor Brown back in Kansas. I was a state commissioner on the Florida Commission on Healthy Marriage and Families. That what happens in the workplace a lot of time in a negative way are really family issues that play themselves out in the workplace. And businesses lose $6 billion per year due to divorce in the workplace. And I have what's called a divorce calculator on my laptop there. I can go to any corporation, tell every CEO just how much money they lose for every divorce in their workplace. And Floridians, you as taxpayers, you pay $1.96 billion per year for divorce and number of childbearing in the state of Florida. And at the federal level, it's $112 billion. So people think, oh, the breakdown of marriage and family has no effect. Actually, it has a huge effect, particularly in business. And companies know that the number one loss to employee productivity is, guess what? Family issues that play themselves out in the workplace. And so businesses actually are starting to become a little more proactive in saying, wait a minute, we're not going to keep taking a hit on people's issues. An example, there was a large company that went to federal court because every time there was a divorce in their business, in their company, it was a large company, the company had to pay $4,000 just to split that employee's 401k. And they couldn't recoup it. And they thought, well, this is ridiculous. Why should we pay for their failed marriages? And so a federal judge actually said, yes, you can take $4,000 out of their 401k to pay yourself back. And so businesses are starting to say, wait a minute, it's not right for the company to have to suffer financially because of things that are happening. And so years ago, I started going, wait a minute then. If we're really going to have a large effect and make sure businesses are very healthy places to work, then we have to have healthy people, right? If you have healthy people, happy families, healthy people, better work environment, more productivity translates into more what? Profit. And that's what businesses work for, right? I mean, let's be honest, that's why they exist. And in so doing, myself included, I began to realize, well, what does a good leader look like, and what makes a good leader versus a manager? Now, my background professionally, I've managed psych hospitals, been in private practice. I've worked in public policy. So I've done a lot of different things. I've been in management positions, I've been an employee, all those different things. And I've worked for managers and I've worked for leaders. And there's a very big difference between the two. And so many years ago, I just started teaching leadership. And a lot of my work, and you'll see this theme throughout my work. Anybody heard of Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence? Anybody heard of that? His book came out in the early 1990s. It's gone around the world. And Goleman's book was a business book. He basically points out this, that the reason people get in trouble the higher they move up the corporate ladder isn't knowledge issues. It's what's known as emotional intelligence. And what we do know is emotional intelligence will take you further in the corporate world than your IQ will. In other words, you can be a brilliant person and very immature. Emotional intelligence is just a different way of saying maturity. And a lot of times we have today very immature people in leadership positions. And you wonder why they treat people the way they do is because they're immature. They lack emotional intelligence. And his whole book actually shows you the higher person moves up the corporate ladder, the reason they get fired are for the way they treat people. It's lack of emotional control. It's immaturity, or he'd say lack of emotional intelligence, or EQ. And so because I've seen that in my own life, have worked for some of those kind of people, it became important for me to actually make sure we have healthy leaders. But a healthy leader has to be a healthy, mature person. You see, and healthy, mature people treat people very differently than immature people do. And so you will see the theme of my work, particularly today, you'll see this theme of maturity throughout everything that I do. If you're a student of the culture, I encourage you to look at a book called The Death of the Grown-Up, How America's Arrested Development is Bringing Down Western Civilization. It's a very good insight into where our country is. And we have mostly today our emotional children raising children, and we wonder why we see the problems we do today is because there's very fewer and fewer healthy, mature adults. And so a lot of the work you hear today will have that theme throughout. We'll talk about what is a leader, all right? So if we can jump to the next stage. So here's kind of the overview today. First, we're going to talk about leadership and you as a leader. And we're going to kind of look at what are some character traits of leaders. How do they communicate? Excuse me. How do they make decisions? And leaders provide the what and followers the how. All right. Next would be the leadership. Go ahead. And the team. All leaders have a team, right? You've got to be leading somebody. And we're going to talk about how do you obtain and maintain followers, how do you develop your team, staff development, and getting what you want without a fight. You ever try to get something done and people argue and scream or yell at you or cop an attitude? Well, there is a way to get what you want without a fight. And lastly, leadership and skills, employing the third person. Now, that's not God. There is this little voice in your head that we're going to give it a name, all right? But we're going to talk about what is that part of you, that if you employ that part of you, you can always begin to do a self-check, self-awareness. And by getting in touch with that part of you, you might make better decisions. Healthy, mature people tap into that third person. Immature people don't know how to, all right? I'm talking about attitude. Don't choke to help, all right? Sometimes you feel like, all right? Some of your employees that are working with you, we want to just choke them, do what I say, whatever. And then lastly, how do you manage personalities? So that is kind of our overview for the day. So let's kind of jump right into it and let's go to leadership in you. And you'll notice I've given you all the PowerPoint slides, kind of spelled them out for you, because I figure if you're going to be here for a whole day, then we're going to be here for a whole day, then I wanted you to have something to follow along with, all right? And talk about that. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about, and if you will go ahead and push that for me there. We're going to talk about character traits of effective leaders, all right? And if you help me to the next slide. I want to talk for a minute here. First is, what is a leader? What is a leader? And here's a definition. A leader is a person who has a vision. We're going to break these three pieces down here in a minute. They have drive and a what? Commitment to achieve that vision and the skills to make it happen. You'll find out later that managers don't have visions. They actually try to help somebody else's vision come along, all right? But leaders have vision. They have a drive and commitment to achieve that vision and the skills to make it happen. If you'll hit, and over here it says leaders have vision. Let me read this to you. Go ahead, push it. A leader has a vision. Leaders see a problem that needs to be fixed or a goal that needs to be achieved. It may be something that no one else sees or simply something that no one else wants to tackle. Whatever it is the focus of the leader's attention and they attack it with a single-minded determination. So ask yourself as you go through the day, what kind of vision do you have? Whatever department you have, do you have a division for your department? Now, granted, all organizations have a large vision, right, for what they want and what they want to accomplish. But within your own division, whatever people you're leading, do you have a vision for them? All right. Next, we're going to look at the second part here. Leaders have a drive. All right. Go ahead and push it for me. What makes leaders different is that they act. One thing I've learned about leaders, the people especially I've worked for, now I'm a 12-year Navy vet, so you get a lot of leadership in the military, right? But one thing for sure is leaders act. They're decisive. They're going to make something happen. And even when things seem to be overwhelming, leaders will even challenge their fears and act. They're going to do something. Why? Because they have a commitment to making sure they get that vision and see it happen. And lastly, and this is important, leaders have traits and skills. All right? Communication skills. They have the skills for emotional management, emotional regulation, because they're mature people. Immature people don't have emotional regulation skills, and that has to do with this lower part of your brain here, all right? So leaders have traits and skills, and it's using and developing those skills that makes these people become great leaders, because with those skills, though you have to have vision and drive, you got to know what to do, don't you? You got to know what to do and how to do it. I can, one of the ways I help people understand this, the essential piece of skills, is if you got 100 on your driver's exam, the written exam, the state of Florida might be impressed with you, but they're not giving you a license. Why? It's because the state of Florida understands knowledge doesn't translate into ability. You still have to get in the car and drive. Just because you know something doesn't mean you have the skills to do it. And if the state of Florida is smart enough to not give you a license because you have to prove you can do what you say you know, same thing here. Leaders just don't know and have knowledge. They also have the skills to act on that and make things happen. All right, which is why it makes them leaders. All right, next, we're going to talk about key traits of effective leaders. Now, Marcus Aurelius, here's a quote by Marcus Aurelius. Listen to this. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Be one. So we're going to kind of heed that quote by Marcus Aurelius, be one. What do they look like? And here are some traits of effective leaders, all right? First, they have integrity. Next is they're optimistic. Next, they embrace change. They are risk takers. They're tenacious. They're catalytic. And they're committed and dedicated. And I'm going to talk about each of these, and these notes are in your handout there if you want. All right, first we're going to kind of talk about integrity for a minute. Integrity is defined by what you do and what you say have to match, right? If I say one thing and do another, and those things don't match, then these aren't there. Go ahead and push back. Integrity is when you do what you do matches. There you go. Thank you. Matches what you say matches what you do. If you're around a person and they talk a certain way, but they're not doing the same thing, you could argue they lack integrity. Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I was speaking to an association annual conference, and I did a breakout session. There was about 200 in the room. About 30 minutes into this workshop that I was teaching on how to be healthy and how to be mature and how to treat people. That was the whole conference that I was doing. My phone rang. I picked up my phone, literally, and I turned my back. And this is what they heard. No, I'm teaching a class. No. I told you don't call me during the day. No, I'm teaching a class. Fine, I'll see you tonight, but don't call again. And I hung up my phone. And I turned around and started to teach. Well, you could feel the tension in the room. It was thick. And one guy near the back of the room, over here to my left, said, "Excuse me, Dr. Marks." I said, "Yes." He goes, "Was that your wife on the phone?" And I said, "Well, yes, it was." He said, "You just talked to her that way?" And I said, "What way?" And boy, you could hear the rumbling in the room, people kind of moving in their seats, right? Tension was growing. And he goes, "You're teaching us how to treat people, and yet you talk to your wife in that tone." And I said, "You don't like it?" Ooh, it even got worse, right? And I looked at the class. I go, "Do y'all feel tension in this room?" They're like, "Oh," you can hear the rumbling right in the room. I looked over here to my left, and I said to Nancy, I said, "Nancy, would you do me a favor? Would you stand up and tell this class what I asked you to do for me 30 minutes into the class?" She said, "You asked me before class to come in, and at 30 minutes into class, call your cell phone, let it ring 3 times, and hang up." I said, "Did you do that?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Is that your number?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, thank you." Well, now the class knew I set them up. I said, "Let me ask you all a question. One action on my part, I changed the environment of this room from peace and warmth to tension and coldness. How often do you do that at work or at home, and you don't know it or you don't care?" And then I asked this question. I said, "If I had continued teaching, would you have listened to me?" And one lady, she said, "No, I was about to get up and walk out on you." And I said, "Thank you very much for your openness, ma'am, and honesty." Why? And here's her word. She goes, "Because you don't have any credibility." And I said, "So let me ask you this. I have a PhD, 2 master's degrees. I could teach you a lot of things, but it wouldn't matter." She says, "No, because you have no credibility." I said, "Thank you. You're exactly right." You see, to have integrity, I have to be the very thing that I teach. You got it? If I'm going to go around and teach about healthy relationships, yet I don't have them, then I have no what? Credibility, and I don't have any what? Integrity, all right? And so you've got to have integrity. Next, leaders are optimistic. People don't follow others who tend to be negative and see the future in negative terms. You ever been around negative people? Negative energy attracts negative energy. But you're not going to be, those that follow you aren't going to follow a leader who's negative all the time. Those tend to be managers. But leaders stay optimistic, all right? They stay optimistic. They want to follow those who see the future and let them know that there is a better place and they can get them there. In other words, do you see the cup as half empty or do you see it half full? Leaders will see that it's half what? It's half full, all right, not half empty. And they find ways. They're not pessimists. Next, they embrace change. Change is a part of life. Get used to it. Yes, tell people, get used to it. Change happens. Change happens in marriages. Change happens in parenting. Change happens in the world. Leaders are able to embrace change. I wrote here, leaders are the ones who will see the need for change and willingly embrace it. Followers will at first desire to stay where they are. Isn't that true? Why can't we just stay here? It's comfortable. No, because things are changing, especially in the marketplace. We have to make changes because when things change out there, it was mentioned many, many years ago, books written about this. It used to be said that the horseless carriage would never, ever make it. So we have to keep horses and buggies around. Well, guess what? The horseless carriage did make it because we all came to work in one, didn't we? You see, there are those that could not embrace the change. All right, the culture is changing around us. Next, leaders are risk takers. They take risks. I wrote here, whenever we try something new, we are taking a risk. That is part of growing through and it is imperative. Most people are risk averse. We'd rather stay comfortable. But to take a risk means to challenge your fears. To take a risk means you got to have courage. All right? And to lead people says, wait a minute, we've got to take this risk. We've got to make this move. All right? Next, they're tenacious. They're tenacious. The tendency of the follower is to quit when the going gets tough. 2 or 3 tries and their motto becomes, if at first you don't succeed, give up and try something else. But not leaders. They find a way. They're going to find a way. Because remember, they have a vision, right? Let's go back to our definition. They have a vision. And they have a drive to make sure that vision happens. Let me give you an example. We'll use an example from American history. Edison. Way back in those days, after Edison finally discovered in nature the secret to the light bulb, he was interviewed. How many experiments did it take? Well, it was just over 10,000 experiments. Now think about it, over 10,000 tries to get the light bulb. And then the reporter said, well, what was it like to fail 10,000 times? He said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. It was just 10,000 ways to not do it. You hear the difference? Because here's what leader Edison said. In my mind, I saw the light bulb in nature. I knew it existed. It just took him 10,000 ways to try and get the light bulb out, the secret to the light bulb out of nature. But he saw it here. That's the vision. Great leaders, they see what they want. It's in their mind, and they know they can get there. It's just a matter of how to get there. All right? They're tenacious. They're also catalytic. A leader is only one who gets people going. They're able to move others out of their comfort zone and on toward the goal. They can raise the passion, enthusiasm, and the action of those who follow. They're going to make things happen. They're catalytic. They get things motivated. And lastly, they're committed and dedicated. Followers want people who are more devoted and committed than themselves. At the first sign of the lack of commitment, followers scatter for the doors. If the leader sees the end and is bailing out, they better get out first. Followers follow those who will stick it out because they see the importance of the task and the goal. So you can ask yourself, do you have these traits? Are these a part of who you are? And if not, begin to develop these traits in yourself. All right. Now, Santa Clara University, if you'll pass this on the next one for me, in the Tom Peters group, actually defined these traits of leaders based on some research. We'll take a look at these now. One, they said that they found in their research that leaders are honest. They display sincerity, integrity, and candor in all actions. All right? Deceptive behavior is not going to inspire trust. Have you ever worked for a leader or someone and you knew that they were lying? You knew they were being manipulative? What does that create in you? A sense of lack of what? Trust in that person, because you know they're not being what? Honest with you. All right? Leaders are competent. Base your actions on reason and moral principles. Do not make decisions based on childlike emotional desires or feelings. Again, this is about maturity. You see, I'm 53 years old, and you can be 53 and still emotionally a child. I do a lot of marriage and family work as well, and parenting work, and do a lot of marriage seminars. And usually when I talk about maturity, you'll see this, a wife bunching her husband, see, told you I have 4 children, not 3, and that kind of thing, And I was like, that's immature to do that anyways, all right? But the reality is they're competent, all right? They make rational decisions. And so they're able to use the rational mind and control the emotional brain, which is called your limbic system, all right? They're forward-looking. They set goals and have a vision of the future. The vision must be owned throughout the organization. Effective leaders envision what they want and how to get it, and they habitually pick priorities stemming from their basic values. All right, so they're forward-looking. Next, they're inspiring. You ever been around someone that inspires you? Just think about somebody. I mean, when I was in the Navy, I had a chaplain that I worked for. The man inspired you. Every time Chaplain Fletcher would come around, you felt like you were the most important person. You know, you'd walk away from that exchange with that man and you go, wow, not only is he a good chaplain, he's a great officer. You know, I worked for another one, an admiral, 1 star. Maybe you walk around this guy, now, you know, you talk about an admiral, they're up here, I'm way down here, right? And he'd come by and say, hey, Petty Officer Marks, how you doing today? And I said, fine, sir. And he'd always put his hand on my shoulder. I'm young, in my early 20s. And he'd say words over me, appreciation and stuff. And you'd walk away from that exchange going, man, I'd take on a hill for that man, right? This guy inspired you. And that's the kind of man that I want to be for those that I lead in our organization and the work that we do. I want to inspire people, all right? Of course, you need intelligence, right? Healthy leaders don't have a small realm of knowledge. And to do this, I'm going to show you something that I think might be beneficial for you. And so, you got it?
Yep.
All right. We talk about knowledge for a minute. That circle represents all the knowledge that exists in the world. So if this circle represents all the knowledge that exists in the world, how much knowledge do you think you possess? Maybe a dot, most people would say. We would all admit, based on all the knowledge that exists in the world, we don't know very much, right? Have you ever noticed when you get into conflict with somebody, your brain acts like it knows it all? Just be aware of that, because it does. Because your brain actually will function in a way that it knows everything. But we can admit we don't know much. So we're going to take all this knowledge that exists in the world, and we're going to divide it into some categories. The first category is a realm of knowledge of the things that you know. And then there's a realm of knowledge of the things that you don't know. Now, what you know and what you don't know have one thing in common. Your brain knows what it knows, and it knows what it doesn't know. All right, so what is something you know that you know? Hopefully you know that you're a male. Hopefully you know you're a female. Hopefully you know that you're here in this room with us right now. Hopefully you know where your car is parked. Got it? So there's a realm of knowledge, things that you know that you know. There's also a realm of things you know you don't know. Now, what's something you know you don't know? I know that I don't know quantum physics. And I know that I don't want to know quantum physics, all right? And so your brain can only function from one realm. It only functions from the realm of what it knows, which, by the way, is that little dot there because it isn't much, based on all the knowledge that exists in the world. So when couples are in conflict, when people are in conflict in the workplace, you can only argue from your realm of what? From your realm of knowledge. And so, here I'm arguing. Let's see, we'll pick on Darren here. I argue from my realm. He's arguing from his. Well, there's a problem here in the workplace. We're both arguing back and forth, but we're only arguing from our realm of knowledge. And in the midst of this argument, he says something that I didn't know, which is this massive area out here, this large white space out there. Now, what's something you don't know? And the answer is, you don't know. And if you're confused by that, it kind of works this way. Before you ever heard my name, saw my name, or saw me, you did not know that you did not know me. Right? The moment you heard my name or saw my name, I was no longer someone you didn't know. Today, I'm someone you know you don't know. And after today, you might not want to know me, but that'll be a different issue. See how it works? And so here we are arguing. You only argue from your realm of knowledge. When he said the thing that I didn't know, at the moment he said it, it conflicted with what I knew that I knew. But in that moment, I also knew that I was wrong. What do most people do in that moment? Most people keep defending their point. Why? It's because they want to win. It's not because they're teachable. You always know mature people, they're teachable. Immature people are not. Because mature people understand they don't know everything. And because they don't know everything, they always seek knowledge. But many people would rather stay in their little dot and operate out of that, as if that's all the knowledge that exists. And the reality is there's so much more to be known. And great leaders read. Me particularly, I read about 4 to 5 books a month. So I read in a lot of different areas, all right? Not that I'm brilliant, it's just I like reading, all right? I like expanding this little dot and making it more, right? But if I learn more and I begin to gain more knowledge, I've increased my realm of knowledge. And because I've increased my realm of knowledge, I can change some things about myself because I learned some things about myself. Oh, by the way, denial is when you learn something you didn't know. that conflicts with what you know that you know, and you don't accept it as true, even though it is true. I'll pick on him again. It'd be kind of like this. I say, hey, you have an anger problem? He goes, I don't have an anger problem. I said, well, how do you know? I know. I said, but how do you know? I just know. Well, it's here at work, you do this, and you do this, things he doesn't know that he doesn't know. He goes, well, I didn't know how to do those things. Well, you do, and those suggest you have an anger problem. I don't have an anger problem! Well, actually, people jumping here. What he doesn't know that he doesn't know is he does have an anger problem. He's just not willing to consider the possibility that what he thought he knew that he knew is something he doesn't know that he doesn't know. Leaders live in what's possible. They always create possibility. This is why they have vision. They can see something as possible. Why? Because they're teachable. And they recognize they don't know that they don't know, so they will find someone who can know or give them information they don't know. And once they gain that knowledge, they open themselves up and they grow, mature. They handle things very differently. All right? That's why they're intelligent people. All right? And by the way, being intelligent doesn't mean, like me, a PhD and 2 master's degrees. Because you have a PhD and 2 masters, that doesn't make me intelligent, right? This just means I was academic. All right? Fair-minded, show fair treatment to all people. Prejudice is the enemy of justice. Display empathy by being sensitive to the feelings, values, interests, and well-being of others. You notice here, leadership isn't just about getting a job done, is it? If you look at these traits that we're talking about right now in effective leaders, it's not just about having vision, it's also about how you treat people. It's how you move people. And we'll see that heavy in this first section here. All right, next. Leaders are broad-minded. They seek out diversity. They're courageous. They have perseverance to accomplish a goal, regardless of the seemingly insurmountable obstacles. They display a confident calmness when under stress. They're straightforward. They use sound judgment to make a good decision at the right time, and they're imaginative. All right? They make timely and appropriate changes in their thinking, plans, and methods. They show creativity by thinking of new and better goals, ideas, and solutions. And why are they imaginative? It's because they're constantly learning. They're constantly getting information. They're getting feedback. Why? Because I want to be a better leader. I want to make sure that I have everything considered, and they understand they don't know it all. So what do? They put people around them that can help them think things through. All right? And that's great for leaders. All right, next. And lastly, great leaders build excellence in people. Mature leaders do not demand excellence in those they lead, they build it. So what is excellence? Go ahead and hit. Excellence is defined this way: to surpass others or be superior in some respect or area, to do extremely well. If there's one thing about great leaders, is they want to do things really, really well. All right? And they don't want something done shoddy. They don't want something done, halfway. I was with a group last night, and this gentleman had worked for an electric company, and he was their top employee. And he went out on his own many years ago, and he trained his sons how to do electrical work. And one of the sons was giving his dad an appreciation because it was their birthday, and they're all sitting around sharing appreciations. But the middle son said this: one thing I appreciate you is when I work with you, you always said, even though this family can't see what's behind this wall, the temptation is to do shoddy work because they'll never know because it's behind the wall. But you will know. You will always know what kind of work you do. Always do the best. So if anybody ever breaks this wall down, they will see fine work. You got it? And that's excellence. That's excellence. So ask yourself, do I pursue excellence as a leader? And do I inspire excellence in those that I lead? All right. So that's kind of the traits. Now we're going to move to the next part and talk about communication leadership, how one impacts the other. Now, I'm going to tell a story here real quick because I give stories of my own journey. Many years ago, when I was still in graduate school, I worked at a psychiatric hospital, a very large one, 198 bed. And I had a boss. His name was Ray. And Ray was truly a narcissistic personality disorder. He was a true access to diagnosis narcissist, but he was very good at diagnosing. psychiatric disorders. And so our department was called the intervention department. Anybody that came to our psych hospital or called in went through us. And we did the psychiatric assessments up front before they saw anybody. And within an hour to 2 hours, I had to have a diagnosis and a plan of action for that person. If they are suicidal, I stabilized them. All right, so I'm very good at those kinds of things, deterring things. Well, Ray was really good too. The problem about Ray is, being a narcissist, he doesn't communicate well. He screams and yells, cusses like crazy, but nobody challenged him. Because you knew if you did, being a true narcissist, you're not going to win anyways. Because see, narcissists only focus on who? Themselves. Everybody else is irrelevant to a true narcissist. But he did teach me a lot of good things. And so when I first went over to the department, because Ray doesn't relate to people, he relates to plants and fish. So in the office building where our offices were, which was across the street from the hospital, there were plants everywhere in this building. So we were in a room, we meaning the other 4 interventionists and myself, we were in a room just a little bit bigger than this room here, and our desks were up against the wall. My first day on the job, Ray comes in, and he hands me this box with a probe on it. Marks, follow me. And I've heard the stories of Ray. So he goes and he puts the probe into some dirt, and he said, see, it's normal. What I was doing is measuring the moisture. He said, your job is make sure my plants' dirt is watered well. And he said, I won't use his word, but mess up. Like, okay. So I took that little back to my office, put it on the desk, and the other 4 sitting there goes, oh, Ray gave you the plant job, huh? They said, just go ahead and mess it up. Just don't worry about it. Just mess it up. He'll take it away from you. I thought, that's interesting. I said, y'all have had this job before? They go, oh, yeah. And y'all have messed it up? Yeah, just mess it up. He'll take it away from you. So I thought to myself, wait a minute then. If I water these plants well, I bet he can think I can do anything. So I started watering plants. I got ragged on by my colleagues in my office there. But I kept it up. Ray would go and measure it behind me just to make sure I got it right. I had to feed his fish in his 30-gallon tank in his office there. All right? About 6 months into this, again, Ray doesn't communicate well. Ray screams and yells. And he screamed in the building. I went to his office. He chewed me out about something I told him about. I did the day before, but he didn't remember. But when you get into those situations, you don't argue with the man. You just stay there and take it. Right? So I stood there and took it. And at the end of it, he said this to me. And if you're going to blank something up, just don't mess up my plants. He wasn't worried about the kid in Houston who had a psych issue. He worried ultimately about his what? Plants. The way I dealt with him was always being respectful, even though he was not. Now, you could fight back if you wanted to, but I realized fighting back with someone like that isn't going to work. So my way of communicating with him was always out of respect. Though I didn't respect the man, I respected his position. I learned that in the military. You may not respect the man, but you will respect the position. Got it? The military is clear on that, and I took that into it. Mm-hmm. But I always communicated with Ray in a very different way than he did with me. I was 6 months in the job when this happened. 2 months later, he promotes me above everybody else. Lets me run the hospital for him for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, 2 12-hour shifts. All I had to work, 7A to 7P, full salary, full benefits. I got Monday through Friday off, making the same thing they were making, working 5 days a week. Oh, they were upset. And you know what he told them? Why he hired me? It's because I watered his what? Plants. And because I watered the plants, he thought I could do anything. But he also respected me because they would push back. I wouldn't. Because I knew pushing back something like that just gets me in trouble. So we're going to talk about communicating. All right, go ahead and push that for me. To make an effective connection, you have to use the full range of communication channels. Professor Albert Mehrabian of UCLA, basing in his research, proved this. Now, this is interesting. When it comes to communication, your words, the actual message you send, the words you use, only account for 7%. The other 93 is tone and voice and body language. Your tone and body language, the brain will read far greater than it does the message. So if I were to say something like, "You look nice today," Well, what I said was nice, but the brain reads the what? The tone. It reads the body language. Got it? And so when you realize that what you say means nothing when it's being measured by how you say it. There's an old Bible passage. I think it was like, speak the truth in love. Well, this is really getting to this. Because see, if someone spoke the truth in love, right? Love, I always tell people, love has a tone to it, right? And if you're not being loving, guess what? That has a tone to it. So I would tell people, better mind your tone. Better mind your tone. My wife, I love her like crazy. We've been married 31 years. It's been the best 31 years of her life so far, you know. But mine too, as a matter of fact. But when she grew up in a broken home with a lot of alcoholism, so she didn't get in touch with her emotions real well. So when she would communicate, especially to the kids, it was harsh. And I kept saying, you better change your tone. I didn't say anything wrong. It's not about what you're saying. It's about how you're saying it. And in particularly my oldest son, if you keep this tone up, he's going to rebel against you. And sure enough, when he hit 13, 14, he did. And he said to her one day, oh, I know what you say, Mom, but I also know how you treat me. He's referring to this. You see. And so when research shows that only 7% of what you say is picked up, 93% is all the other. So that requires me being in control of my brain so that when I communicate with you, my tone and body language are in a way that your brain will pick up the message. We usually say, well, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because how you come across will dictate whether people hear you. Because once you are in negative energy, the person that you're talking to, their low brain, this part of your brain right here, the fight, flight, or freeze response, it's triggered at 1/2000th of a second, folks. And at 1/2000th of a second, your brain goes fight, flight, or freeze. And once you're in fight, flight, or freeze response of the brain, the rational mind, which is known as the neocortex, shuts down. Because when you're triggered into defensiveness, you're not meant to think. You're only meant to what? React. All right? But if my tone and body language are caring, empathic, loving, then the people you talk to aren't triggered into low brain energy. They stay in their higher order brain and they'll hear your message. All right? Next. So, communication is the imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, and information by speech, writing, or signs. All right? So, go ahead and hit me next one here. Great leaders are great connectors. They have these traits in common. There's energy. Can you imagine someone going, all right, let's go ahead and tackle that problem right now, and we'll just get to it. Yeah, I know. All right. Any other questions right now, team? All right, let's just go do that. Right? It's a good idea there. Good idea there. Boy, that energy's low. It's like, right? I mean, when people go, hey, all right, what are you going to do? I mean, get around Tom over it, you know? Man, the energy's high, right? But great leaders have high energy. Why? Because energy inspires people, all right? They're warm. They smile. They look at you and smile. Now, I'm not bragging on this guy I'm about to tell you about because he's my brother. I'm telling you about him because he is this kind of a person. My brother is senior vice president, third from the top at SunTrust Bank. It is said of my brother Don that he's the kind of man that would take someone that everybody else would fire and he turns them into the best employees the bank has had. Because he is truly a leader in the greatest sense of the word. People fight to get into his department just to work under him. And there's hundreds in his division. But they want to work under him. I would go, when I go to Atlanta and hang out with him, he said, listen, I got to go down on the 7th floor. When I go, he'll walk by and he'll put his hand on someone and say, hey, how you doing? How's your wife? Or how's your husband? Hey, how's that son you told me about? He remembers things about him. These people love him. They do 150% for him. Why? He's a great communicator. He looks at you and he smiles. You see, he inspires people. He's expressive, open body language. They're not closed all the time. Right? Great leaders communicate this way. We're open. All right? There's eye contact. Imagine someone talking to you. So what you're telling me is, and you look away. You know, your brain starts to go, are you listening to me? Are you hearing me? You know, leaders communicate what they look you in the eye. All right? The ability to make the listener feel understood, their own distinctive communication style, they have it, and their openness about their own feelings and beliefs. All right? They're not closed and guarded. They're actually open. All right? Next. So, strong communication leader skills here. It says a leader who has strong leadership and communication skills, however, will find it easier to connect with others. And I'm going to argue this is probably one of the greatest attributes of leaders. They connect. If you look at world history, military history, and some of the greatest military leaders, a lot of times those men follow those people not because they are ordered to. They follow them because those leaders connected to them. Robert E. Lee, gosh, I can go on. Hal Moore, Napoleon. They follow those men because Napoleon would go down and meet the guys who were privates and talk with them. He connected to them. They follow him everywhere, you see. Alexander, those people went from what is modern-day Greece all the way to India and back. You imagine following somebody all that way? Why? Alexander would get to know your name. They follow that man anywhere. Why? It's because he connected to him. He connected to him. And when people are connected to you, I think of my brother Don, they'll do anything for you. They steer an organization through rough times. They build morale and manage conflict. And they inspire people to better themselves and work harder. I get an example here. My brother had a guy who he runs the IT side. There was a guy in his division who was brilliant when it comes to IT, but his productivity had dropped considerably. Don called him in to talk to him about it, because Don invested tens of thousands of dollars in training this guy. And he asked the guy, he said, "What's wrong?" And the guy just opened up and said, "It's not what I want to do." "What do you mean?" And so Don asked him, if money was an issue, what would you be doing? He said, the guy lit up and sat up in the chair and goes, "You want to know what I'd do, Don?" He said, "Yeah, what would you do? If money was an issue," he goes, "I'd have a band to play all over Atlanta." He said, "Why aren't you?" "Well, I got school debt and I got this debt." And he says, "This job is really to pay off debt." "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing to fulfill your dream, your passion?" "Well, when I can, I play in a band, a garage band." So 2 hours later, Don had a 5-year plan for this guy set up to be out of debt and in a band full time in 5 years. Helped him do it. The guy finished it in 4. But guess what Don had for 4 years? One of the best motivated employees for 4 years. Was Don sad to lose him? Sure he was. But that guy's living his dream. And what's more important? The guy's living his dream. And Don helped him get there. You see? Inspires people. All right, next. Key components of effective leadership communication. Develop the mindset of a leader. Emotional mastery is critical to congruent, credible communication. Next. Be able to connect with people on an emotional level. People make opinions and decisions based on their emotions. Next is develop leadership charisma. Charisma can be learned. You can learn. You go, "Well, I'm just shy." Okay, but you can learn to be charismatic on some level. I'm not trying to make you like me or someone else who's an extrovert. Okay? Actually, if you were to really measure me, I'm an introvert. I really am. If you put me in a group of people I don't know well, I will actually go to this corner and just kind of hang out. I tend to be more of an introvert. But I learned I can't always be that way. I have to learn balance, all right? A leader must always maintain authority while still communicating charisma and learn to move like a leader. Learn to move like your body language reflects your emotional state to the world around you. Be aware of how are you coming across. Head slumped. "Well, we're going to have a meeting today." Man, your body language says a lot about who you are. But leaders stand tall. They look you in the eye. You see, there's a sense of authority with them, but they connect to you. You want to lead, you want to follow these people. So learn to move like a leader. All right, next. So let's talk about the communication process real quickly here. First, it's a thought. Information exists in the mind of the sender. All right? This can be a concept, an idea, information, or feelings. So the communication is, there's a thought. You have a thought. Some of you are thinking about what I'm talking about. Some of you are thinking about lunch or thinking about something else, I don't know. But there's thoughts going on in your mind right now. All right? So a communication begins with a thought. Next, it encodes. All right? You take that message and you have to encode it somehow. All right? Now, there's different ways to encode it. It could be body language. It could be verbally, right? It could be with grunts. You're sending a message, but there's a thought behind that. You're a jerk, right? And out of that thought, there you go. It gets encoded somehow into something, and then next, You decode it. Lastly, the receiver translates the words or symbols into a concept or information that he or she can understand. Not only does the leader's verbal and nonverbal affect the decoding process, but the receiver's attitude, belief system, history, and emotional understanding inhibit the decoding process as well. What this basically saying is, once I have the thought and I encode it however it comes out, all right, those who are seeing that message come across decode it. But they decode it by how you come across and what you say. All right? My children, I'm at the empty nest. I raised them. I said, why do people curse? Why do people curse? There's hundreds and hundreds of words in the English language. Why choose a few to express yourself? I said, what do you really come across as? And I define people who use a lot of curse words as feeble minds trying to express themselves forcefully. Because why would you want to use language that's that when there's all kinds of other languages, words in the English language that you could choose from? You see, but no, I'd rather relegate myself to these few. And so I told my kids, and when you do that, what is the message you're sending about yourself? Because remember this, you cannot not communicate. This is the fundamental of life. You cannot not communicate. Everything you do is communicating something. Think about it this way, if you see this a lot in couple relationships. Guy sitting on the couch, girlfriend or wife comes up and says, what are you doing? Nothing. Well, that's not true. You're doing something. You're sitting there staring at the wall. But you sitting there staring at the wall is still communicating something, isn't it? It's impossible to do nothing because you're doing something. Now, what you're doing has a message, and people have to decode what it means, but what it really means, I have to ask you, what are you doing? Well, I got gas. I'm trying to figure it out, right? Who knows what it means, right? We just don't know. See what I mean? And so when you always have to know how you're coming across. That's why I always ask people, and I do with my kids, how am I coming across to you right now? The team that I work with, when they go, Rick, you're upset. What am I doing that sends you that message that I'm upset? Well, you did this, this, and this. Whoa, okay then. I don't get defensive because I learned from that. I go, so when I did this and you took that as being upset, yes. Well, then let me undo that message. I'm not upset. And then I'll tell them what it is. All right? Because one thing that great leaders are going to do, they're going to make sure that the message they intend to send is being sent the way they want it sent. And if there's a block in how it's decoded, now remember, you might have an attitude, you might have gas, you might have had a bad day at home. That affects your ability to hear me as well, doesn't it? So not only is how I'm coming across affected decoding, whatever's taking place in the listener affects how it comes across as well. All right? So be aware of that. Now, there are 4 filters typically that will affect our ability to hear. And by filters, when we hear things, those whatever you hear gets filtered through physical, psychological, physiological, and semantic noises. So here's some ideas. If you hear dogs barking, or loud music, or aircraft, other people talking, that's going to affect your ability to hear. All right? So if someone walks in the back door right now in the lobby and starts yelling and screaming, and I keep talking, that noise in the lobby is going to affect your ability to stay focused here, won't it? That becomes a filter for you. It affects your ability to hear. Psychological noise. If you have money worries, you're going through a broken relationship, right? Crushing deadlines. There's other people in the room that you don't like. All of that psychological stuff affects your ability to listen and stay focused as well. If you're feeling sick, you've got a headache, right? Whatever going on, that affects your ability to listen. And lastly, semantic noise. Part of my family, my mother's side of the family were Lebanese Muslims. My father's side were Jews. Figure that one out, right? But if I use a lot of Yiddish words in here, right? Oy vey, you're a sugar, that kind of stuff. Well, all of that kind of stuff, that's going to affect your ability to listen to me, right? Right? I say I'm a closet redneck from North Georgia, right? So if I go back to my redneck language, right, boy, it affects your ability to listen, right? So there's words that you use. All of these things, mispronouncing words. I remember I was sitting under a guy, and he would teach sex education, sex therapy. But he never said the word right. He wouldn't say gonorrhea, he'd say gongoria. Gong. And we would think, this is like the Gong Show, And every time he'd say it, we'd quit listening because his mispronunciation would cause us to giggle. And then those of us right around that little area start making jokes. Well, he's still talking, right? And guess what we're not doing? We're not listening. And he had great information to give, I'm sure, at that moment, but his mispronunciation caused us it was a filter for us, all right? Euphemisms and phrases from foreign languages. All of these things affect a person's ability to hear you. Now you can say, well, that's not my problem. And actually it is your problem. Because as a communicator who's sending, you want to make sure the message you're sending is being received the right way. And that's why as a leader and as one who does communication skills training, I will go, did you hear me? Did you hear what I'm saying? Do you get it? Is this making sense to you? Or what are you hearing me say? That way I know that the message that I wanted to send was received accurately. And if it wasn't received accurately, I just correct it. All right? Next. So identify your filters. Here's some filters you would typically hear. Advising. Well, I think you should. How come you didn't? One-upping. That's nothing. Let me tell you what I did. All right? That's also called hijacking. Educating. Well, this could work out very well for you if. Some people don't need your input. Matter of fact, I have a saying in life that I believe is true. It is disrespectful to give people input into their life without their permission, unless they're your children or an employee. Because you're paying them to listen, right? But even among peers, equals, don't give information to people if they don't want it. Always ask permission, all right? And I do this even as a leader. I say, can I share with you what I'm thinking? Sure, Rick. And then I tell them what I'm seeing, all right? Consoling. Don't blame yourself. You did the best you could. Storytelling. That reminds me of the time. Shutting down. Don't worry about it. Cheer up. Sympathizing. Oh, poor you. I'm sorry you didn't get that. I just had to deal with the guy that we let go. He was doing development work for us. He had 3 months to get 10 people into one meeting. Didn't do it. And yet he kept blaming everybody else for his failures. And 2 days ago, I sat with him for 2 hours at lunch. And I said, I'm going to tell you what I think it was. Now, he didn't report to me, but he was in the same office with me. It's your insecurities that did it. But you're blaming everybody else, but you're deeply insecure. And here's how I know, He listened to me, broke down, started crying. He goes, you're right. And I said, what bothers me is you blame everybody else for your failures. Because you're not able to stand up and go, I'm insecure. And you are. And I said, I'm not here to beat you up. I'm here to inspire you to move past this. And he called me yesterday. He's got himself a counselor. He's doing these other things. And he's going to finally work on those parts of his life. But it makes sense. At one point, he was 500 pounds. Wouldn't you think he was insecure? He had a lot of emotional baggage. And I just there as a friend and as a leader said, look, think about this. Go do this. Fix this part of you. Don't let this part of you destroy you. All right? Storytelling, shutting down, sympathizing, interrogating. Well, why did you should have done it this way. How come you? Explaining, well, what I could have done is, and then correcting, that's not what happened. These are also forms of filters that inhibit people from listening to you. All right, and hearing what you have to say. All right? Next. So what are some traits of a good listener? They don't interrupt. They don't interrupt. Next, they look you in the eye. Next, they're respectful. And if you're going to hear a phrase from me, this is a big one right here. I've learned that though you may not like a person, you could always be respectful to that person. So I define, we'll look at this later in more detail, but I define respect this way. Respect is how you treat somebody. I may not like you, but I can be respectful to you in your presence. If I can't, then I won't be around you. But I do believe strongly that though you may not like someone or respect the person, you can still be respectful. That's just about how I treat you, all right? They do not attack. They don't turn conversations onto themselves. They don't give advice unless asked. They don't ridicule or put others down. They don't act like they're smart. You know, people say, oh, you're Dr. Marks. Yeah, but just call me Rick. Well, but you're a doctor. Just call me Rick. Doctor just means I finished school. You know, I don't necessarily have to live in titles, right? I know what I'm smart about, and I know what I'm not. I know what my limits are. Right? I don't know everything. I don't know everything. All right. Good communicators are also supporters, and good listeners are supportive. They reflect back what a person says to make sure they've heard accurately. All right. And lastly, they smile and show empathy. So ask yourself, what kind of a listener are you? You know, how many of these traits do you actually possess? Or do you do some of the opposites? Because if you do some of the opposites, you're not really listening, are you? And a good listener, a good leader will do these things, even to an employee who's upset with them. And that's the real challenge, right? To be able to sit back and listen. All right. So now we're going to talk about decision making as our third part of looking at the leader and yourself as a leader. So we're going to talk about how leaders make decisions. So here's some reasons for decision making difficulties. One, the leader's uncertain. And when you're uncertain, that creates a hesitation about decision making. I wrote here, all the facts are not known, some unknowns still exist. Think about it this way. Some decisions have to be made, don't they? And there's still some unknowns. But a decision has to be made because something needs to change now. Well, I don't have all the facts. You may not get all the facts for a while. What are you going to do? Sit on this thing? Something's got to give. Something's got to change, right? Next is complexity. The leader, you can create complexity. And let me say something about emotions. Once emotions get in the way, they become more complex. So one of the trick is to pull out of the emotional brain, which is called the limbic system, and go, all right, aside from how you feel, what should you do? Because you want to make decisions not based off emotions. You want to make it based off reason and logic and knowledge, right? Complexity says your issue is complex and has many factors. Some things have many pieces of the puzzle, don't they? It's not just about this. If this happens, it affects all these things. Well, that makes it more complex. All right? High-risk consequences. Consequences of decision are great. But if we do this, what's going to happen? Think about what's taking place in this government right now. The whole issue with immigration and those kind of things. Well, those are decisions being made, right? And there's a lot of people who see those decisions and go, wait a minute, that decision has impacts. But yet, a decision was made because someone's willing to challenge their fears and still make a decision. Whether you agree with the decision or not is irrelevant. My point about decision making is I am sure those who are making these tough decisions recognize we don't know all the ramifications. We've tried to learn all that we can, but there's still a sense of hesitation. But they made a decision, all right? Next, when there's a lack of alternatives, we must encourage the idea generation to create alternative ideas. We must encourage the idea generation to create alternative ideas. This is a generation that has ideas. I mean, look at Google and all the things they come up with, right? Here are people producing all kinds of ideas. But when you have a lack of alternatives, you tend to step back and hold back. Well, I don't know what else to do. There's nothing else out there. That's why I talk about things you don't know. There may be some people out there who know some things that you don't know that can help you get information that gives you more alternatives, all right? And lastly, interpersonal issues. If you struggle with fear, pride, insecurities, critical spirit, all of that will affect your ability to make a decision as well. So what does the word decide mean? It means literally to arrive at a solution that ends uncertainty or dispute. It comes from the Latin decidere, which means to cut off. It really means to cut off. A decision cuts something off. But to not decide means you're going to what then? Prolong it. And some things need to be cut off. If you struggle with decision making, let me give you a resource that you might find interesting. It's called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. It talks about why people do not make endings when they have to make endings in their life. Why haven't you fired that employee? It's because you don't know how to do necessary endings. Some people just need to be fired. Some marriages are just over. Some things just need to change. But some people don't make those decisions, and he talks about what it is about a person that holds them back from making those decisions. A very, very good resource and good book. So the decision making here is a process of examining your possibilities and options, comparing them, and choosing a course of action. And that's really what decision making is. It's examining possibilities and options, comparing them. What are the options here? Comparing them, and then what? Making a choice. Again, remember, one of our traits of leaders, they have vision, right? And they have drive to make that vision happen using skills and tools. In other words, great leaders are decisive. They're going to make something happen. They make decisions, all right? Next, In the book Crucial Conversations, there are 4 common ways that these folks identified the way people make decisions. Think about which one of these you are. First is a decision making by a command. Decisions are made with no involvement. I've decided it. I'm the boss. You don't question. Get it done. All right? Let's start with decisions that are made with no involvement whatsoever. This happens in one of 2 ways. Either outside forces place demands on us, demands that leave us no wiggle room, or we turn decisions over to others and follow their lead. Well, you decide, I'll just do whatever you want. Well, as a leader, that's pretty poor to do that, right? The reason you do that is because you don't want to be accountable. I had to confront someone here not too long ago about that. It was a couple who have an issue with their daughter, and the wife is like, well, let her decide, let her decide. I said, why would you let her decide? Well, because then if she learns, she can learn from her mistake. Yeah, but this has pretty serious consequences to it. Well, but she'll learn though. And I said, but she could go to jail. Well, she'll learn. The husband's like, that's stupid. We helped guide her, right? And they were butting heads. And finally, I said, why do you really want to make the decision? She said, because I don't want to make it because I'm afraid. So you rather hang your daughter out there because you're afraid to make the decision? You hear that? So she wants to turn the decision over to the daughter and let the daughter command the decision so that she can feel safe and the daughter won't not love her. Because that's what it came down to. If I do that, she won't love me. Well, it's kind of unhealthy, don't you think? We don't care enough to be involved. Let someone else do the work. Commands are needed, aren't they? There are times we need to do command decisions. This is the way it is. Just do what I ask. All right? So that's one way. Next is consult. This is when you get input from others. You invite it. Consulting is a process whereby decision makers invite others to influence them before they make their choice. You can consult with experts, a representative population, or even everyone who wants to offer an opinion. Consulting can be an efficient way of gaining ideas and support without bogging down the decision-making process, at least not too much. Wise leaders, parents, and even couples frequently make decisions in this way. They gather ideas, evaluate options, make a choice, and then inform the broader population. And so this one is, there's a leader, I'm the final decision maker, but before I make a decision, I go get feedback. That's why businesses hire, consultants, right? Consultants come in, give them their thoughts and opinions, and the decisions are left up to the decision makers, all right? Next form of decision making is voting. Here you discuss options and call for a vote. All right, everybody in the room, get out a sheet of paper. Here's the options on the board, write one down. And then we make our decision based on what you all think and feel based on the vote of the group, all right? Voting is best suited to situations where efficiency is of the highest value. Because this way you get more buy-in, right? Because we have more people voted for this than that. Well, now you got efficiency because you have more people, you know which way the people are going to move, right? And you're selecting from a number of good options. Members of the team realize they may not get their first choice, but frankly, they don't want to waste time talking the issue to death either. They may discuss options for a while and then call for a vote. When facing several decent options, voting is a great time saver, but should never be used when team members don't agree to support whatever decision is made. In these cases, consensus is required. All right, so there is another way you can choose a vote option, and the next way of decision making is consensus. You talk until everyone agrees. You know how long that could take? I mean, there's some people out there still trying to figure things out a year later, all right? This method can be a great blessing, and it can be a real curse as well, all right? Consensus means that you talk until everyone honestly agrees to one decision. Now, let's think about that. Unless you're pretty like-minded, that's going to be very difficult to do, right? I'm sure in this room, it'll be very difficult to do in some decisions, right? Maybe some areas we all have consensus on, and some you won't, and it's just the way it is. If you're a leader and you're looking for this to happen, I would argue you're afraid to make a decision, because at some point you've got to decide, all right? If misapplied, it can also be a horrible waste of time. It should be only used with, number one, high stakes and complex issues, or two, issues where everyone absolutely must support the final choice. All right, so we're telling you here, these are where it's best used consensus. And then next, there are 4 types of decision makers. All right, 4 types of decision makers. So we've just looked at 4 ways in which people do decision making: command, consult, vote, and consensus. Now here are your 4 types of decision makers. First, your intuitives. These are led by intuition. They concentrate on the possibilities, avoid the details, and tend to look at the bigger picture. All right, this is. I tend to be one of these. All right, whatever I feel and those kind of things, I get information. There's a sense of intuition. I think I got it. All right. Some are there. Some are thinkers. This is my wife. All right, analytical. They want to research everything. They want to look at all the nuances. I was just doing a live radio show talking about mob mentality and all, how it relates to all these things. And the guy that runs the show is a doctor, MD, but he's a researcher. And I show up just to talk about stuff in general. He has done research from the 1800s on mob mentality and sociology. And I'm like, dude, it's only an hour, But that's him. He's a thinker. And he had to go study all this stuff and think it through and for him to come up with a decision, all right? We need these people, don't we? We need these people because these people are the ones that get information. They tend to go learn those things. These people have information as well. Now, the next group is where I tend to really go most of the time. I have this trait, but this is my dominant one. We're interested in the feelings of others. We dislike intellectual analysis and follow their own likes and dislikes. Sometimes, most of the time, as I was growing up, my decisions were based on how I felt or how you felt. What do y'all feel? Oh, we all like this? Great, let's do it, all right? And there's nothing wrong with this because these people are great at working with people. If you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs test, you're kind of tapping into that here, right? The only problem with making decisions based off your feelings is you're not also basing it off of what? Facts. And so these people tend to make poor decisions when it's based off how you feel. Because how you feel may not be based in reality. So you always want to have these people around you, all right? Next are your sensors. They see things as they are, have great respect for facts, have an enormous capacity for detail, and seldom make errors, are good at putting things in context. So if you think about which one of you are, this is kind of the psychological types of how people make decisions. This has been my dominant one, but I've learned to transform this and become more of that. All right? But this is where I live most of my life right here. I was just impulsive. Oh, sounds good. Feels good. Let's do it. And then I'm like, why did I get in trouble? Well, you didn't know this, 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 and this. Oh, guess I should have thought about those things. But I didn't. All right? And then I put some people around me who were thinkers. I'm a real vision guy, and I'm really good at coming up with ideas. But I learned I better have these people around me. They're like, hey, that's a great idea, Rick, and it sounds great. Pull back 20 feet here, and let's talk about this, 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 and this. You got to do all these things in order for that to happen. Like, oh, fine. Okay, let's get it done then. And I move on, all right? And leave it to them. So you have these different types of decision making. All right. Now, next, factors to consider on who owns a decision. Who owns it? Typically, it's the leader. Can you allow another person to make that decision for you? In other words, is it okay to delegate that decision out? Is there going to be buy-in? If you're going to make a decision, you've got people following you. Are they going to buy into that decision? If they don't, you don't have to move the command. We'll do it anyways, right? I'm the boss, you're not, but you don't have buy-in. And if you don't have buy-in, you got a problem, I would argue. All right? And if you have a history of poor decisions, followers are lot less likely to buy in. You see? Okay. Understand what information is required, who gathered, and when is it needed. And next, develop alternatives through idea generation and brainstorming and work as a team. When it comes to decision making, what I have found in great leaders will pull their team together. And you'll see this in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. That when these work teams get together, everybody throws out their ideas. They have freedom to speak how they want. And when it's said and done, they're still a team, all right, and a decision's made, but they all have buy-in. And one thing I've learned is when it comes to good decision-making, find out what everybody in the room thinks and feels and honor how they think and feel. I go back to my core word of respect, right? And when you respect people, though they may not agree with the decision in the end, they're still on board. Why? They've been heard and they felt respected. And they're more likely to buy into the decision. Though they may disagree in some areas, they're still emotionally invested, all right? So here are more factors to consider. Refuse the alternatives. Next, make a decision. Don't get stuck here. Make the decision. You may not have all the information, as some information may be unknown. Make a decision anyways. Because remember this, to not make a decision is a decision. Did you get that? To choose to not make a decision is a decision. You made one anyways. You just made a decision not to do anything. But by choosing to not do anything, you're also allowing things to continue. All right, problems to happen. All right, next. So, 7 steps to decision making. And this comes out of some research by McMahon in 2007. It says here, when in an organization is faced with a difficult decision, there are several steps one can take to ensure the best possible solutions will be decided. These steps are put into 7 effective ways to go about this decision-making process. So here's the first one. First step, outline your goal and outcome. What is it you're trying to achieve? This will enable decision makers to see exactly what they're trying to accomplish and keep them on a specific path. So I always ask my team, what is it we want to do? What is it we're trying to accomplish? What's the end result? What is the vision out there? All right, what's the target? If there's not a clear target, you're not sure you're going to hit it, right? So what's the clear target? First step. Second step, gather data. This will help decision makers have actual evidence to help them come up with the solution. So start gathering data. You may not be the one that goes get data. I may say, hey, why don't you go and get some information, come back to us and let us know. Go research this piece, all right? Third, what is third step down here? Actually, that was messed up, didn't it? List the pros and cons. All right, that should actually be third step. List pros and cons of each alternative. So after you've gone and gathered data and you looked at it, what are the pros and cons? All right, take a look at it. And as a team, start to weed those things out. Fifth, make a decision. Make a decision. Once you analyze each solution, you should pick the one that is more positive and beneficial. Actually, I see what happened here. Somehow that got moved down. After you list pros and cons, third step is, I got it all wrong. Let me back this up. Third step, brainstorm. So once you have your data, now you start brainstorming. Just generate ideas. And in brainstorming, no criticizing. There is no judging anyone's ideas. It's just throw those ideas out. Then, after you brainstorm a bunch of ideas, go ahead and look at those. What are good? What are bad? Decide on one. All right? We actually teach this in our marriage and family work as well, and in parenting work, to do the same process. All right? Next. Sixth step, then take action. Once a decision is made, immediately take action. Once the decision is picked, implement it right away. Don't sit around and wait. And lastly, watch the decision, watch the effects, study the effects of it, and tweak it if you need to. All right? Tweak it if you need to. Learn from, reflect on the decision making. These steps allow you to see what you did right and wrong when coming up with and putting decision to use. All right. Last part of leadership in yourself, we're going to look at leaders provide the what and followers provide the how. Now, so here's some points to remember as we get into this. One, letting followers decide how empowers them. If you're a leader and you make all the decisions, your followers are saying, well, what good do I have? Am I just a robot? Am I a slave? Am I just a taskmaster? Do I just follow what the taskmaster says? Remember, leaders as people inspire others. By inspiring people, you got to let them do something, right? So we let them decide how something happens. I being a military guy, I think of the relation between Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee would say to Stonewall Jackson, I need you to go do that. He never told him how to do it. He just said, General Jackson, I need you to accomplish this. And he left it to Jackson to get it done, and Jackson did. You with me? He didn't sit down, I need you to do this, and here's how you're going to do it, and spell it out in detail for him. So all Jackson had to do is be regurgitating, okay, we're supposed to do it this way, because this is how the general wants it done. All right? So allowing people to figure out how to do something empowers them. Next, it allows you to develop your people. And again, great leaders develop their people. Third, it may seem like giving up control, but you're not really giving up control. I've had some people go, well, wait a minute, if I let them figure out how, then I lose control. No, you don't. Because you're still over them watching them, right? You're still a leader. You're still involved. And if they start to do something, well, what are we doing this for? Well, hey, let's shape it and move it this way. All right? So even though they're doing how, you can still shape it. When we talk about physical noise,
it really shouldn't be that
Okay. All right. All right, then we're going to move on. So you can edit this part out here.
People understand that.
All right. Next, it builds team value, morale, and commitment, not just the team, but also to the leader. And lastly, not only do the individual team members win, but the organization wins. And I've always been one that says, when us wins, the organizations win. I can win, but that doesn't mean the organization is going to win. But when the team wins, everybody wins, all right? And so let me give you a quote here in a minute. Kurt Lewin's study on leadership styles, okay? Here's the quote. It's by George Patton. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. And if anybody knows the history of George Patton, he's a great leader, great military general, but a great leader. Inspired people, accomplished great things. But never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. So Kurt Lewin, a psychologist, identified these leadership styles. We're going to take a look at each of these: authoritarian, participative, and delegative. The first one is the authoritarian leader. This style is used when leaders tell their employees what they want done and how they want it accomplished. All right? Without getting the advice of their followers. You are an authority. I'm the boss. You're not. Do as I say. Some of the appropriate conditions to use it is when you have all the information to solve the problem, you're short on time, and your employees are well motivated. Some people tend to think of this style as a vehicle for yelling, using demeaning language, and leading by threats and abusing their power. This is not the authoritarian style. Rather, it is an abusive, unprofessional style called bossing people around. It has no place in a leader's repertoire. Let me give an example of this. I had a friend of mine who's also a doctor teaching my marriage intensive. One of the things that we do is we take couples in divorce court, and we get 85% of the people that go through our divorce process in 3 days stay married. We get people out of divorce court. But he had changed a process of mine. He brought this section and moved it to the front. And I said, Ed, let me tell you something. I appreciate you doing that. And let me help you understand what you do it for. Well, then he goes, I appreciate your thinking that. However, I can't let you do that. You may not agree with me, but I believe strongly in this philosophy. So I need you to not do that. You got to keep this back here. I want this taught first. He goes, not a problem, Rick. You see, that was this kind of leadership in that moment. This is what I need you to do. I appreciate that you want to switch it around, the how, but we're not going to do that. It has to stay in this model because I've been researching this thing. It works. Well, actually, it feels better this way. I may feel better for you, but my research is showing me this works. I'm not going to change it because it's working. You see? And he began to see what I was talking about later. The authoritarian style should normally only be used on rare occasions. My old boss, Ray Phillips, is all he did. He was a narcissist. If you have the time and want to gain more commitment and motivation from your employees, then you should use the participative style, which we'll look at here in just a minute. All right, next is participative style. This style involves a leader including one or more employees in the decision-making process, determining what to do and how to do it. However, the leader maintains the final decision-making authority. Using this style is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it is a sign of strength that your employees will respect. So to give you the ability, is we're here in a group, and I say, all right, why don't you all, think it through, come up with a decision, let me know what you decide. Well, then you guys start making decisions. You come in, hey, Rick, here's what we thought about, you want to do it. I go, hey, great idea. Hey, I like this part and this part. I'd like you to tweak that part right there. Okay, and you go do it. My brother Don operated this way with a lot of his people. And about a year ago, he was really upset. And I said, what are you upset about? He said, well, I've given the team 4 months to come up with a decision around this thing. He said, it is now 4 months, and they haven't considered the key pieces I keep reminding them about. He said, I'm angry at them. And I said, well, how are you going to handle that? He said, well, it won't be anger. He said, but I will let them know that I am disappointed because I've redirected them, and they've not been listening to me. You see it? So he had to move from this to what? Authoritative. Because they just weren't getting it, and they were wasting time, and he was under a time deadline by his boss. All right. This is normally used when you have part of the information and your employees have other parts. Note that a leader is not expected to know everything. Isn't that nice to know? As a leader, you don't have to know everything. Just remember that right there. You only know what you know, and you know what you don't know. This is why you employ knowledgeable and skillful employees. Using this style is of mutual benefit. It allows them to become a part of the team and allows you to make better decisions. And then lastly is delegative. In this style, the leader allows the employees to make the decisions. However, the leader is still responsible for the decisions that are made. This is used when employees are able to analyze the situation and determine what needs to be done and how to do it. You cannot do everything. You must set priorities and delegate certain tasks. Delegative is when you're able to just say, hey, here's something I need done. You're free to go do it. All right? You're giving that person, you're taking your authority, putting it into them, and giving permission to go get something done. All right? This is not a style to use so you can blame others when things are going wrong. Because if you're going to delegate to someone, you're still responsible for the outcomes, right? You're just giving that part of your authority. I'm imparting it into Shelley, and now Shelley, operating with my authority, goes and makes something happen because I gave her that ability to do that. But if something messes up, as a leader, I'm still to blame. They take responsibility, all right? And so this is also known as laissez-faire if you do any research, which is the non-interference in the affairs of others, all right? Laissez, second. I won't get into all that. But just remember, so those are the three. So you can think about where do you tend to operate yourself, and you can ask yourself, how do you operate where you work? You see, can you imagine working in an authoritarian leader all the time? You don't have a sense of say. You just go and you do. You don't question, all right? Participative, we function more as a team. And that's where people tend to thrive. And that's where people tend to really build themselves because they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. All right, delegative. You can delegate to a person, but you can delegate to a group as well. Okay. Just remember though, when you delegate, you're still what? Responsible. All right. It's not a way to blame someone. All right. Next, what are some things that force the style that you want to use? What are some forces that affect? Should I be authoritative, participative, or delegated? So here's some things to think about. How much time is available? If you got to make a decision in 2 days, you might want to revert to what? Authoritarian. I'm under a time constraint. I'm sorry, but we have to make a decision. All right? Are relationships based on respect and trust or disrespect? If there's a lot of trust and respect, move to participative. Move to delegative, all right? If that's what you need. Who has the information? You, your employees, or both? Next, how well your employees are trained and how well you know the task. If you don't know the task, one of the things my brother always said was they forget, though I'm a senior VP and I'm in administration, I was always a geek first. And I'm one of those rare people here who knows what they do. I just don't manage what they do. I know what they do because that's who I used to be. I was a geek. I built these systems. And he moved up, where most managers just came in at that level with MBAs. Don built them and moved into management, you see? And so he knows what they're doing and not doing. He knows those systems, all right? What kind of internal conflicts are taking place in the group as well? What are the stress levels that are taking place, all right? What's the type of task? Is it structured? Is it unstructured? Is it complicated or simple? And lastly, does OSHA have something to say about what you're doing? Are there laws out there that regulate the decision making? You see what I mean? Those kind of things. So these are some forces that will help determine what type of decision making that you should move toward. Next, it has to do with positives and negatives. There is a difference in ways leaders approach their employee. Positive leaders use rewards, such as education, independence, etc., to motivate employees. Negative employers emphasize penalties. While the negative approach has a place in a leader's repertoire of tools, it must be used carefully due to its high cost of the human spirit. Did you get that? It can really, one of the things I really believe in strongly, at least for myself, is you don't ever destroy a person's spirit. Even if they work for you, you always treat people with dignity and respect. Because dignity and respect always keeps a person's spirit high. But if you squash a person's spirit, they may show up to work, but you don't get much out of them. All right, they're there to get a paycheck at the same time. And we'll see here later when we talk about the 5 dysfunctions of the work teams. If there's not a lot of trust there, you've got a problem in your organization. Negative leaders act domineering and superior with people. They believe the only way to get things done is through penalties, such as loss of job, days off without pay, reprimanding employees in front of others, etc. They believe their authority is increased by frightening everyone into higher levels of productivity. I used to work for that. I don't care to be that. All right? My way of dealing with people is respect, goodwill. There's 4 words I live by: respect, goodwill, humility, and us. And we'll talk about the usness piece later. All right? But those are my 4 words I live by. And I challenge everyone that comes to me for help, whatever, to live by those 4 words as well. All right? So what are some differences? Go ahead and just keep punching these. What are some differences between managers and leaders then? So let's go ahead and punch all those, and we'll come up with a leader thing here. First, managers drive their employees. Managers drive their employees, where leaders coach their employees. Managers depend on their authority. I'm the boss. You don't question me. Well, they already know you're the boss, but that's how managers lead. I'm the boss. Do what I say. But leaders depend on goodwill. They know they're the boss, but they don't have to go around pushing that. Oh, by the way, you can be a boss and someone else be the leader. Right? You might be the manager in a position of authority, but someone else could be the leader in that room. All right? Leaders depend on goodwill. Because why? They're relational. They treat people with loving respect and goodwill. And that's how they want to operate. All right? Managers inspire fear. If you don't, I'm going to fire you. If you don't, something's going to happen. Here, in generating fear doesn't do anything. What we want to do is increase enthusiasm. We want to inspire you. We want you to feel good about coming in. All right? Those kinds of things. Managers talk about themselves. I saw a quote here not too long ago. I posted on my Facebook. It said, I met a manager and I learned about himself. I met with a leader and he learned about me. Here's the difference in that. I met with a manager and I learned about himself. I met with a leader and he learned about me. Managers like to talk about themselves. Leaders will learn about you, and they see themselves as a part of this team. They think in terms of the we, the us. Okay? Managers place blame for problems. Leaders fix it. I learned a long time ago from some mentors of mine, there's a real difference between problem solving in Japan and America, in the West. In America, something breaks down. What we do over here is we got to find who did it, who's to blame, right? And in Japan, they don't do that. Something breaks down, they just go fix it. Blaming something doesn't mean anything to them. You find out what happened, and you just go fix it. But we like to blame someone and punish. We'll focus on what happened, who did it. They go, hey, it's broken, let's just go fix it, move on. Managers, they know how it's done, where leaders show you how it's done. Managers use people. Leaders develop people. And so I'm the kind of guy that, hey, where do you want to be in life? One thing I always ask people is, if money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing in life? I was at a restaurant here, and matter of fact, it was last night at the Roadhouse, and with my son, who's at Florida State last year, and the young girl, she's in school, and she said, well, I'm working my degree in this, but I'm not sure I want to do that anymore, right? And I'm really confused. I said, well, if money was never an issue, what would you be doing? She goes, well, I don't know. I go, yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's inside of you. If money was an issue, what would you do? She said, I'd be counseling. I said, then why aren't you? And then she had all these excuses. Why? I said, you understand those are excuses. Go make it happen. What about the money? It will come. But if you worry about it, it will never happen. Go live in your passion. And I've learned this. If you love the work that you do, if your work is your passion, you never work. See, I don't go to work because I'm living in my passion. So I don't work. I get to be what I get to be. I get to be who I am. I like that. All right? We develop people. Managers take credit. Leaders give credit. Managers command. Leaders ask. Managers say go. And leaders say, let's go. Because they see themselves as a part of the team. It's not me and you over there. It's we. Got it? They always see themselves as a part of the team. All right? So, that ends our first section on leadership and you, the leader.